The years after World War II, up until the 1980s, were kind of a golden era for the American economy. We had an implicit social contract in place where wages and productivity both moved together. And so as we became more productive and as the economy grew, so too did workers' incomes, and we created a much bigger middle class where kids could then go on, get a college education, and move on from there. That was very effective because you had strong institutions in the labor market. You had collective bargaining. That's where that wage formula came from in the 1940s, out of the auto workers and General Motors negotiations. But somewhere along the line in the 1980s, that broke down. More international competition, changes in technology, unions started to decline and got weaker. A lot of reasons. But we really have not replaced it with a new social contract yet in the modern era. And so we have to find ways to address the economy that we have today. Not to go back. We can't go back and recreate the same conditions as we had when we had a largely domestic economy. But what we have to do is recognize that in a global economy with changes in technologies, we have to reinvest in education. We have to invest in education on a lifelong basis. We have to find ways to make sure that workers continue to keep their skills current. And then we have to find ways to adjust our wage formulas in ways that make sense. Here at MIT, long before any of us were here, way back in the 1940s and early 1950s, the best incentive pay plan was invented, called the Scanlon Plan, by a fellow by the name of Joseph Scanlon, who was an instructor here, who came out of the labor movement. And he worked with companies and employees to put together a modern-day suggestion program and pay for performance plan. That program rested on four principles. First, pay a fair base wage and build the incentive program on that as a complement, not a substitute for it. Two, involve everybody in your enterprise in this plan so that everybody has got an incentive to cooperate and find ways to improve the operation and not to compete. Three, make sure that employees are involved in both the design and the administration of the program so that they trust it, and in providing continuous improvement suggestions and ideas for improving performance so that they can then generate the productivity that helps to provide a share of those gains. And then fourth, as technology changes, you have to adjust the formula for the payment of productivity gains and so on. Make sure that's transparent so workers trust it and they can make sure that they continue to get a fair shake. So I think those are the kinds of programs we need. We also need to make sure that as technology changes, like at Kaiser Permanente, where they replaced the chart room workers like other healthcare organizations, they retrained those workers. No one got laid off. They had an approach that really helped them to adjust to the changes in skills, provide new job opportunities, and make sure that they could progress so that they continue to work with that technology and add to the performance improvements and customer and patient satisfaction that our healthcare system needs. And then finally, we've got to do something about the totally unacceptable income gaps that we have in this country, and especially the ratio between the salaries of the top CEOs in the country and the average workers. We used to pay about 30 to 50 to 1 ratios of CEOs to the average worker. That was back in the 1960s, 70s, even into the 80s. Now that's 300 to 1 or so. It's not sustainable economically or politically. And so we've got to start to address the boards of directors and make sure that they take care of their responsibilities to provide fair wages for all their employees, including their CEOs and top executives, but not unacceptably large ratios like that.